The rain wouldn't stop that night. It pounded the hospital windows like restless fingers, echoing the chaos that had erupted in the ER minutes before. Flashing red lights spilled through the automatic glass doors as paramedics wheeled in a gurney. On it lay a small girl, no older than 7, her body limp, face pale, blood crusted in her hair. Dr. Andrew Hayes was in the middle of signing discharge papers when the trauma alert rang through the intercom. He dropped his pen and sprinted toward the surgical bay. Pediatric trauma, unresponsive at the scene, suspected head injury and multiple fractures, the nurse shouted over the sound of rushing footsteps. Hayes leaned over the tiny frame. Her chest barely moved. "What's her name?" he asked. "Unidentified. No ID. Found unconscious by the side of the road near Route 17. Looks like she was thrown from a vehicle. Let's intubate. Get neuro, trauma, ortho." "Full code," Hayes commanded, slipping into sterile gloves. "She's not dying tonight." For the next 10 hours, Dr. Hayes worked as if the girl were his own blood. Her skull had a hairline fracture, her femur was broken, and internal bleeding was threatening her life. He moved through the operating room like a conductor, leading a symphony of precision and urgency. When her heart stopped twice, he brought her back both times. And when the nurses hesitated after the second code blew, he shouted, "She's not done, not yet." When the final suture was in place and the monitors steadied, Dr. Hayes stepped back, trembling. The little girl lived, but she didn't wake up. Days turned into weeks. The coma persisted. No family came forward. No one reported a missing child matching her description. It was as if she had fallen from the sky. The staff began calling her Angel, but Dr. Hayes, he called her something else in the quiet moments when no one was listening. "Sweetheart," he whispered, brushing her hair gently. "I'm here." He visited every morning before his rounds, every evening after his surgeries. Nurses raised eyebrows, but said nothing. They'd never seen him like this. The usually stoic and reserved surgeon now lingered beside a little girl with no name, telling her stories, leaving her paper cranes, sometimes even just holding her tiny hand. Then one morning, 33 days after the accident, he walked into the ICU, coffee in hand, just as he always did. But this time, the nurse rushed to him, wide-eyed. "She moved," she whispered. "Dr. Hayes." She moved her fingers. He dropped the coffee. The next hour blurred in a mix of hope and fear. They dimmed the lights, turned off unnecessary monitors, and waited. And then her eyes fluttered open. "Angel," Dr. Hayes said softly, stepping to her side. Her gaze searched the room with confusion, her lips parted, and then she spoke. "Daddy." Hayes froze. The world stopped turning. Tears welled up in his eyes as he knelt beside her. "I'm here," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm right here." He didn't correct her, didn't tell her she was mistaken, because somehow, in the quiet corners of his heart, it felt true. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the word hung in the air like a bell tolling in a cathedral. "Daddy." The room around them, the beeping machines, the nurses, the sterile white walls, faded away. Dr. Hayes swallowed hard. He had seen miracles in his career, but none like this. She blinked slowly, her eyes struggling to adjust to the light. Is it morning?" "It is," he said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've been sleeping for a while." She turned her head weakly toward the window. "It's raining," she murmured. He followed her gaze. Rain was trickling down the glass like tears. He squeezed her hand. "Do you remember your name?" She looked confused for a moment. "You called me sweetheart." Hayes smiled softly. "Yes, I did. I still do. But before that, do you remember anything? Where you're from?" She thought hard, her little brows furrowing. Then she shook her head. "It's okay," he said quickly, afraid to see her panic. "It's okay. You're safe now." She closed her eyes and sighed. "Okay, Daddy." Nurse Carla stood by the door, arms folded, her eyes misty. After a moment, she stepped out quietly, leaving them alone. Over the next few days, word spread through the hospital like wildfire. The girl had woken up, and she believed Dr. Hayes was her father. Everyone expected him to gently correct her, to explain, to allow the child to begin reorienting herself, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned into the role she gave him, not because of confusion or protocol, but because something deep inside him had shifted. Her chart no longer said Jane Doe. At his request, they updated it to Emily Hayes, temporary. The first time she saw the name written on her IV tag, she grinned. "That's me." "That's you, sweetheart." She clung to the name like it was a raft in a stormy sea. Each day she grew stronger. Physical therapy was slow, but she was determined. She called every nurse auntie and every doctor friend, but with Dr. Hayes she reserved the most sacred word of all, Daddy. It wasn't long before the staff began adjusting. Pediatric nurses brought puzzles and coloring books to her room. A volunteer strung fairy lights across her window. One of the med students, teary-eyed, gifted her a stuffed giraffe. And always Dr. Hayes was there, morning, afternoon, and long after visiting hours had ended. One evening she looked at him seriously and asked, "If I don't remember the old me, can I be someone new?" He tilted his head. "Who would you like to be?" She thought for a moment. "Can I be someone who gets to stay with you forever?" His chest tightened. He reached for her tiny hand. "If it were up to me, you'd never leave." But deep inside, he knew the truth. Someone, somewhere, was missing her, and one day they might come looking. It was on the 12th day, after Emily woke up, that the first call came in. A social worker from the Department of Child Welfare had been informed of an unidentified minor recovered from a coma at St. Luke's Hospital. She requested access to the child's records and scheduled a visit to evaluate the situation. Dr. Hayes stood in the administrator's office as the director briefed him. "She's a ward of the state until we can identify a next of kin," the director said. "They'll want to place her in temporary foster care soon." "No," Andrew said quietly, his voice almost trembling. The administrator raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? She's just barely recovered. She trusts me. Taking her away now would re-traumatize her." "With all due respect, Dr. Hayes, you're not her legal guardian, and frankly, your involvement, however well-intentioned, is unconventional at best and ethically risky at worst." Andrew's jaw clenched. "You weren't in the room when she said her first word. You didn't see her eyes when she woke up. I can't just let her go with strangers." "Then you'll need to follow protocol," the administrator said. "If you truly believe this child is safest with you, there are procedures, applications, evaluations, and even then, there are no guarantees." That evening, Andrew didn't sleep. Instead, he sat beside Emily's bed, watching her tiny chest rise and fall in rhythm with the monitors. She was curled up against the stuffed giraffe, one hand gripping the sleeve of his white coat, as if letting go might erase him. He gently ran his fingers through her hair. "Daddy," she murmured in her sleep. He felt something deep inside his chest splinter and fall open. The next morning he made the call. "I want to apply for emergency guardianship," he told the social worker. Her silence on the other end was long. "You're her surgeon, aren't you?" "I was," he said. "Now I'm something else." The process began immediately. Interviews, background checks, home inspections. Nurses volunteered to write statements. So did other doctors. The head of pediatrics personally testified that the child had bonded to Dr. Hayes in a way that was extraordinary, stabilizing, and potentially life-saving. But paperwork takes time, and in the space between decisions, fate began to stir. One morning, As Andrew walked into Emily's room with a small pink notebook in hand, she was crying. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. He dropped the notebook. "What is it? What's wrong?" "I had a dream," she said, barely able to speak. "I was alone. I was in a house with no lights and no people and no you." He knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, listen to me. That's not real. I'm here." She grabbed his coat again, this time with desperation. "Promise me you won't let anyone take me." His heart thundered. "I promise. As long as I'm breathing, you're not going anywhere." But as he held her close, his phone buzzed on the counter behind him. It was the social worker, and her message was simple. "We've had a development." Andrew stared at the message on his phone as if the words could be changed by sheer will. "We've had a development." He stepped into the hallway, pacing near the nurse's station, heart racing. When the social worker answered his return call, her voice was calm, but it carried weight. "A woman came forward this morning in a small town outside Denville. She claims her daughter was abducted 2 months ago by her ex-partner, who has a history of violence and vanished without a trace. The girl's age, hair color, eye color, they all match Emily." Andrew gripped the phone tighter. "Does she have proof?" "She has photos. A birth certificate. The missing persons report from 8 weeks ago was buried in an administrative backlog." "Is there a name?" Andrew asked, though he didn't want the answer. "Yes, her daughter's name is Lily." He closed his eyes. Lily. Emily. The child lying in the hospital room, calling him Daddy, holding on to him like he was her last anchor in the world. She had a name, a history, a mother. "We're arranging for a DNA test," the social worker continued. "But if it confirms the match, she'll be placed back with her biological parent." Andrew leaned against the wall as if the floor had tilted beneath him. "And what if she doesn't remember her?" "Then she'll have to learn again," the social worker said gently. "I understand your attachment, Dr. Hayes. Truly, I do. But the law favors reunification with biological family, especially if the parent is deemed fit." He hung up without saying goodbye. When he returned to Emily's room, she looked up from her coloring book, her smile lighting up the room. "You look sad," she said innocently. "Did someone hurt you?" He knelt beside her and shook his head. "No, sweetheart, not someone. Just something I can't fix." She reached for his face with her tiny hand and touched his cheek. "I can fix it. I'm really good at hugs." He smiled, eyes misting, and let her wrap her little arms around his neck. The test was scheduled for the following day. Emily, Lily, was unaware. The doctors didn't want to cause her distress. Not yet. That night, Andrew didn't go home. He sat by her side, watching her sleep, whispering stories about faraway stars and brave princesses. He told her that sometimes people come into your life and rewrite the meaning of family, and sometimes the ones you're meant to find you first. She stirred in her sleep and whispered, "I love you, Daddy." He covered his face with his hands and wept in silence. The next morning, the DNA test was completed, and the results were conclusive. Emily Hayes was Lily Morales, and she had a mother who never stopped looking for her. The day Lily's mother arrived, the hospital lobby went silent. Maria Morales stepped in slowly, clutching a small photograph to her chest. She looked exhausted, pale, underweight, clothes that hung loosely on her frame, but her eyes were alive with something that wouldn't die. Hope. Andrew waited for her near the elevator. He recognized her instantly from the picture the social worker had shown him. The photo was from years ago, but the emotion in her face when she saw him now was timeless. "You're the doctor," she said. "I'm Andrew Hayes." Her voice trembled. "Where is she?" "She's upstairs," he said gently. "Resting." Maria nodded, swallowing hard. "Does she know?" "No," he said. "We haven't told her yet. She She doesn't remember anything before the accident. Not her name, not her home. Maria's face crumpled. But she's alive. He nodded. She's alive. A nurse escorted Maria to a private family room to prepare her. Meanwhile, Andrew returned to Lily's room, his heart a storm of confusion. She looked up from her puzzle. "Daddy, look! I finished the whole border!" He smiled, but it felt like a mask. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Are you okay?" she asked, tilting her head. "You're doing that thing with your eyes again." He took her hand. "There's someone here who wants to meet you." Her brows furrowed. "Who?" "A lady who used to know you, a long time ago." She blinked slowly. "From before the accident?" "Yes." "Is she nice?" He smiled through the ache. "She's the kindest person you'll ever meet." Lily looked uncertain but nodded. "Okay, will you stay?" "Of course." When Maria entered the room, it was like watching two timelines collide. She froze in the doorway, hands trembling. Lily looked at her with polite confusion. "Hi," Lily said softly. Maria tried to smile. "Hi, baby." There was a long silence. Maria took a step forward. I used to sing to you when you were a baby. You liked to fall asleep with your head on my heart." Lily blinked. "I don't remember that." "I know," Maria said, her voice breaking. "But I remember, and I've missed you every day." Lily looked at Andrew, unsure. "Is this real?" He nodded. "Yes, she's real." Maria knelt beside the bed. "You don't have to remember me right now. I just want to sit here, if that's okay." Lily looked at her, then slowly reached out her hand. Maria took it with both of hers, her body trembling with sobs she had held in for too long. Andrew stepped back, watching from the doorway. This was the moment he had dreaded, and yet something about it was deeply right. But later that evening, when Maria had stepped out to speak with the social worker, Lily looked up at him and whispered, "I don't want her to take me." He knelt beside her again. "She's your mommy, sweetheart." "I don't remember her," she said, her lip quivering. "I only remember you." He pulled her close, and once again, he didn't have an answer. That night, the hospital felt heavier than usual. The hallway lights dimmed as usual, nurses changed shifts. But in Lily's room, time seemed suspended. She lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling, clutching the giraffe Andrew had given her weeks ago. Andrew sat beside her, quietly watching her small fingers twist the hem of her blanket. "Do I have to go?" she asked finally. He inhaled slowly. "We don't know yet. But she's my mommy," Lily said, almost like she was trying to convince herself. "She seems nice, and she cried a lot." "She loves you, sweetheart," Andrew said gently. "She's been looking for you for a long time." "But I love you too," Lily whispered. Andrew closed his eyes. "And I love you so much." She turned to face him. "Can I have two families, one with her and one with you?" He reached out and tucked her hair behind her ear. "Sometimes the heart is big enough for more than one family." Lily gave a small, sad smile. "Then I want both." In the following days, Maria remained at the hospital from sunrise to late evening. She took things slow, never pushing Lily to remember, never pressing her to love her too quickly. She told gentle stories about a pink blanket Lily used to carry everywhere, about her first birthday and the chocolate cake she smeared across her face. And Lily listened. Sometimes she smiled. Other times she looked distant, confused. Andrew kept his visits steady but shorter. He didn't want to interfere, but the ache of distance was brutal. He missed her excited morning greetings, her endless questions, the way she called for him during thunderstorms. One rainy afternoon, as thunder cracked outside, Lily called out in panic, "Daddy!" Maria rushed to her bedside, but Lily's eyes were fixed on the doorway. Andrew appeared, breathless, rain dripping from his coat. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said, kneeling beside her. "I'm here." She reached for him without hesitation, burying her face in his chest. Maria stood silently in the corner, watching the scene unfold, her face unreadable. Later that night, Maria approached Andrew in the hallway. "I see it now," she said quietly. He turned to her. "See what?" "The way she looks at you, like you're the sky and the ground and everything in between." Andrew swallowed. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "I know," she replied, "and I'm not angry." There was a long pause. "She needs you," Maria added, "and I think I do too." Andrew looked at her, surprised. "I don't have much," Maria said. "I'm still rebuilding my life. I don't even know how to be a mother again. But maybe we could figure it out together." Andrew blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "You mean, I don't want to take her away from the only home she remembers," Maria said. "Maybe we can build a new one, all three of us." He didn't answer, he just nodded. And for the first time in weeks, hope didn't feel like a lie. They took it slowly. Maria stayed in a guest room at a family facility near the hospital. Every day, she and Andrew shared time with Lily, separately at first, then together. They played card games at her bedside, read bedtime stories in turns, and laughed at her silly impressions of her nurses. It was a dance, awkward and tentative, but guided by one constant, Lily's smile. Andrew found himself watching Maria more often, how gently she braided Lily's hair, how she listened with her whole heart when Lily spoke, how she never rushed the healing. There was pain in her eyes, yes, but there was strength too. Lily, meanwhile, began referring to them collectively. "My mom and my daddy," she'd say proudly to every nurse. Andrew corrected her once, out of reflex, but Lily looked up with big, questioning eyes and said, "But you are my daddy." He never corrected her again. One Sunday afternoon, the three of them sat outside on a bench in the hospital garden. Lily wore a yellow beanie that one of the volunteers had knitted for her. Maria held a thermos of cocoa. Andrew had a sketchbook he'd brought to help Lily draw butterflies. She paused, pencil hovering over the paper. "Can we all live together when I leave?" she asked, looking up at them. Maria and Andrew exchanged a glance. "We're trying to make that happen," Maria said gently. "Will it be a house with stars on the ceiling?" Lily asked, remembering a story Andrew once told her. "If you want," he said, smiling. "And a treehouse?" "With a telescope," Maria added. Lily clapped her hands. "Then that's my wish." Over the next few weeks, the hospital prepared for her discharge. The legal team helped Maria file for full custody, with a note from the social worker requesting that Andrew Hayes be granted secondary guardianship or regular visitation based on the child's emotional dependency and his extraordinary involvement. It was unorthodox, rare, but not impossible. Then the day came. Lily was strong enough to leave. The hospital staff gathered near the entrance. Nurses handed her balloons and signed a giant card. Dr. Patel wept openly. Even the janitor brought her a small flower from the garden. Andrew stood at the doors, unsure of what to do. Lily, now wearing jeans and a purple hoodie, held Maria's hand tightly as they stepped toward him. "I'm ready," she said. He knelt down, heart aching. "You're going to do amazing things, sweetheart." She looked at him and whispered, "Are you coming?" He smiled, tears in his eyes. "If you'll have me." She threw her arms around him. "Always." And just like that, they walked out together into a world that had once been cruel, but was now full of possibility. The man who saved her life, the woman who gave her life, and the little girl who taught them both how to live again. The house they moved into wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a creaky staircase, and a roof that needed patching. But it had a backyard with a tree just strong enough to hold a tire swing, and a kitchen big enough for 3 chairs at the table. It was perfect. Andrew moved in first, using savings he never thought he'd spend. Maria joined a week later, and Lily, officially released into her mother's custody, came home the week after that. They didn't call it adoption. They didn't need to. What they had was something deeper than paperwork. It was stitched together by bedtime stories, burnt toast in the morning, and laughter echoing down the hall. Lily's nightmares didn't disappear overnight. Some nights she still woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, eyes wild with memories she couldn't name. Andrew always came running. He'd sit at the edge of her bed whispering, "It's just a dream. I'm here. I'm right here." She would fall asleep, holding his hand. Maria would watch from the doorway, her heart split between gratitude and guilt. One day, while Lily was at school, Maria sat with Andrew on the back porch. "She called me Mommy this morning," she said, her voice distant. He looked at her, sensing something heavy behind the words. "I wanted that moment for so long, and I got it. But then—" She trailed off. "Then what?" "She ran into your arms after school like you were her son, and I felt it, Andrew. I felt envy, just for a second." He didn't speak. "I'm sorry," she added quickly. "I know that's selfish." He shook his head. "It's not. You're her mother. You fought for her. You bled for her." Maria looked down. "And yet she calls you Daddy like she's always known you." He took her hand gently. "Love isn't a competition." She smiled weakly. "You know, when I was little, I used to pray every night for a family. Not a perfect one. Just one where people stayed. Where they chose each other, even when it was hard." Andrew looked at her. "I think we're building that." Maria nodded. "But it's still strange. Loving someone I barely know, trusting him with the only thing I care about most." He squeezed her hand. "We're learning." They sat in silence, watching the sky change colors as the sun dipped low. In the distance, Lily's laugh rang out as she spun on her tire swing, her small feet brushing the earth with every turn. Andrew smiled. "She's okay," he said quietly. "She's going to be okay." Maria leaned her head on his shoulder. "So are we." That night, they cooked dinner together. Lily insisted on setting the table and placed her stuffed giraffe in a seat, just in case he's hungry. And as they sat around the table, one hand in another, three voices saying grace, no one mentioned what they'd lost, only what they had found: a daughter, a family, and a future none of them ever saw coming. Autumn came early that year. The leaves outside their little house turned gold and amber before September had finished. Mornings were chilly, and Lily insisted on wearing mismatched scarves that she claimed were lucky. Andrew walked her to school every day, a tradition neither of them wanted to break. She'd skip beside him, swinging her backpack like a kite, occasionally stopping to pick up shiny rocks or funny-shaped leaves. "Do you think trees remember people?" she asked one morning, holding up a red maple leaf. "I think trees remember everything," he replied. She nodded, as if that settled it. Meanwhile, Maria began volunteering at the local clinic. Her past was complicated, but she brought warmth and resilience to everyone she met. When she smiled, people felt like they were being seen. At night, after Lily had gone to bed, the house would settle into quiet. Andrew often found Maria in the kitchen, organizing recipes or folding Lily's laundry. They talked more now about books, music, the strange, winding paths that had brought them to the same doorstep. There was no romance, not yet, but there was something deeper, a tenderness that grew each time their eyes met across a room. One evening, Lily came down with a fever. It wasn't high, but it was enough to bring back old fears. Andrew stayed up through the night, checking her temperature, adjusting the humidifier, reading softly to her even after she'd fallen asleep. At dawn, Maria walked in with a cup of tea and found him slumped beside the bed, exhausted. "She's okay," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But I can't help worrying." Maria sat beside him, placing a blanket around his shoulders. "That's because you're a father now." He didn't argue. They watched her sleep, her cheeks flushed but peaceful. Maria leaned her head against his and whispered, "We're doing this." He nodded. "We really are." A few weeks later, Lily brought home a school assignment, My Family Tree. She spread the paper across the kitchen table and began drawing. She put Maria's name at the top with a heart. Then, without hesitation, she wrote Andrew's name beside it, not below, not as an uncle, not with an asterisk, side by side. "Is that okay?" she asked, tilting her head. Andrew swallowed. "More than okay." She added herself under both names, then paused. "Can I draw us all holding hands?" Maria smiled. "Absolutely." Lily drew 3 stick figures under a giant tree with falling leaves. She gave them all smiles and stars above their heads. "That's us," she said proudly. Andrew stared at it longer than he meant to, because somehow, in a world full of chaos, this tiny drawing had become the most honest map of his life. And for the first time in years, he knew exactly where he belonged. The first holiday season in their new home was something out of a movie. Lily insisted on decorating everything, not just the tree, but the staircase, the door handles, the mailbox, even Andrew's stethoscope. "It needs cheer," she declared with great authority. Andrew let her tape paper snowflakes to the windows, even though they curled and peeled within hours. He didn't care. The joy on her face made every crooked decoration priceless. Maria baked cookies in batches, the kitchen constantly filled with the warm smell of cinnamon and vanilla. She laughed more now, full, unguarded laughter that echoed through the walls. It was the sound of a heart slowly healing. On Christmas Eve, they let Lily stay up late. They lit candles and turned off the overhead lights. Maria read from a book of stories, while Andrew played soft music from an old radio he hadn't touched in years. Lily sat between them, head resting against Maria's side, one hand holding Andrew's fingers tightly. As the clock crept toward midnight, she looked up and asked, "Can I make a wish?" Andrew smiled. "Always." She closed her eyes and whispered something they couldn't hear. "What did you wish for?" Maria asked gently. Lily opened one eye and said, "That nothing ever changes, that we always stay like this." Neither of them had an answer. They knew the world didn't promise stillness, but in that moment, beneath the soft hum of holiday lights, they didn't need to say anything. Their silence was a kind of prayer. After Lily fell asleep, Andrew carried her to bed while Maria cleaned the living room. When he came back downstairs, she was standing by the fireplace, staring at the tiny stocking Lily had hung for Mr. Giraffe. "She's the glue," Maria said softly. "She is. But you," she turned to him, "you're the reason we didn't fall apart." He walked toward her slowly, unsure if this was the moment things would shift again. But she didn't move away. Instead, she reached out and took his hand. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "Afraid to trust someone with her, and with me." He nodded. "I was afraid to feel anything again." They stood like that for a long time, hands clasped, the glow of the tree casting shadows on the wall. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, something fragile and beautiful settled between them. A beginning, perhaps. Or maybe a continuation of something that had always been quietly forming since the first time a little girl opened her eyes and said the word that broke and healed them both. Daddy. Spring crept in softly, like a whisper after a long silence. Lily's hair had grown longer. She wore it in loose braids now, tied with mismatched ribbons she insisted were magical. She had grown taller too, just enough that Andrew had to lift her a little higher to spin her in the kitchen. Maria started working part-time at a neighborhood health center. She walked Lily to school every morning, while Andrew picked her up in the afternoons. Life, once chaotic and uncertain, now pulsed with rhythm. One day, as they were preparing dinner, Lily wandered into the kitchen holding a crumpled flyer. "What's this?" Andrew asked, drying his hands. "It's for the school play," she said. "They're doing The Secret Garden. I want to audition." Maria knelt beside her. "Do you want to be the garden?" Lily giggled. "No, I want to be Mary, the girl who brings everything back to life." Andrew and Maria exchanged a look. It was too perfect. "She has to live with strangers," Lily continued, not realizing how close the story mirrored her own. "But then she finds a garden and a boy, and she learns how to make things grow again." Maria brushed Lily's cheek with her thumb. "I think you're already Mary." Andrew nodded. "You've made a whole home bloom." The audition came a week later. Lily wore a blue dress and clutched a lucky charm, an old penny Andrew found in the hospital parking lot the night she called him Daddy for the first time. She kept it in her sock. She was nervous, but she sang her part softly and clearly. When she stepped off the stage, she ran straight into Andrew's arms. "Do you think I'll get it?" she asked. "I think they'd be silly not to choose you." The next day, she came running out of school, face lit like fireworks. "I got the part." They celebrated with ice cream and pancakes for dinner. That night, as Lily drifted off to sleep, she whispered, "I think I found my secret garden." Andrew sat beside her bed. "You did?" She nodded. "It's not a place. It's you and Mommy." Maria, standing in the doorway, didn't speak, but her eyes shimmered. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep, Andrew found Maria sitting on the back porch again. This time, she wasn't folding laundry or reading. She was just staring at the sky. "She calls me Mommy like she never stopped," she said. "She never did," Andrew replied. "Her heart just remembered." Maria turned to him. Do you think we were supposed to find each other?" He didn't hesitate. "I think we were the only ones who ever could." She smiled, and it was different this time, wider, freer. Then she whispered something he never expected to hear. "I'm not afraid anymore." Neither was he. Rehearsals for the play took over their evenings. Lily came home every day with new lines to memorize and stories about her castmates. She brought the energy of a whole theater into their living room, assigning roles to her parents, Maria as the stern headmistress, Andrew as the mysterious gardener. They played along, laughing until tears streamed down their faces. It was more than a school play. For Lily, it was a declaration that she was no longer a broken child in a hospital bed, no longer a name lost in a system. She was Lily, Emily, a girl who had survived and stitched her world back together with love. Opening night came on a warm Saturday evening in May. The gymnasium was packed. Paper flowers adorned the stage. Maria sat on the edge of her seat, clutching Andrew's hand as the lights dimmed. When Lily walked on stage, something shifted in the room. She stood tall, radiant, her voice clear as she delivered her first lines. But it was one particular moment, late in the play, that broke Andrew wide open. As Mary, Lily turned to another character and said, "I didn't know I could be loved by someone who didn't have to love me." Maria gasped softly. Andrew's fingers trembled. Because that line wasn't just theatre, it was a mirror. After the show, Lily ran to them backstage, still in costume, cheeks flushed with pride. "Did you see? Did you hear me?" "You were perfect," Maria whispered, pulling her into a hug. Andrew knelt down beside her. "I've never been prouder of anything in my life." Later that night, they let her stay up late again. They made popcorn and watched old movies. Lily curled between them on the couch, her giraffe tucked beneath her chin. At some point she dozed off. Maria turned to Andrew. "We made it," he nodded. "But it's not the end." She looked at him, eyes soft. "I know." There was a silence that said more than words ever could. Then Maria reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," she said. Andrew opened it slowly. It was a form. Petition for co-guardianship. "I want it to be real," she said. "Legal, permanent. I want her to always have both of us." He stared at the paper for a long time, and then, without a word, he signed it. The next morning they told Lily over breakfast. She looked between them, confused. "Does that mean I get to keep you both?" Maria laughed through tears. "Yes, baby, forever." Lily jumped into Andrew's arms. "Best day ever." And in that moment the past didn't matter. The pain, the fear, the waiting, only the present existed. And it was beautiful. The court date was set for mid-June. It was a formality, really. Papers signed, background checks passed, recommendations from doctors, social workers, even Lily's school principal. But still, Andrew found himself pacing the hallway outside the family courtroom, hands clenched, tie slightly crooked. Maria sat beside him, calm as ever. She reached out and took his hand. "She's already ours," she said. "Today just makes it official." He nodded, unable to speak. When the bailiff called their names, they entered the courtroom together, Andrew, Maria, and Lily holding each of their hands tightly. The judge, a kind-faced woman with silver-streaked hair, reviewed the documents. Then she leaned forward, looking at Lily. "Do you know why you're here today, sweetheart?" Lily nodded. "Because I get to have two parents forever." The judge smiled. "That's exactly right." Then, looking to Andrew and Maria, she said, "It's rare to see something so whole formed from something so broken. This is what we hope for when we speak of family." With a final tap of her gavel, it was done. Co-guardianship granted, legal recognition of the family they had become long before the papers were signed. Outside the courthouse, Lily twirled on the sidewalk. "Can we get cake?" "Absolutely," Maria said. "With extra icing," Andrew added. They spent the rest of the day celebrating. A small backyard gathering, balloons, a banner that read, "Forever Family." The neighbors came. So did some of the hospital staff, who hadn't seen Lily since her discharge. Nurse Carla brought a scrapbook she'd secretly made from photos during Lily's recovery. As they flipped through the pages, Andrew paused at one picture. It was from the day Lily first opened her eyes in the ICU. She was still hooked to machines, still fragile, but her hand was wrapped around his finger. He hadn't remembered that photo being taken. He touched the image gently. Maria saw his expression and leaned in. "She chose you first, you know." He nodded. "I felt it the second she said, 'Daddy,'" Maria finished. He smiled. That word changed everything. As evening fell, Lily sat between them on the porch swing, watching fireflies blink across the yard. "I don't remember my first birthday," she said, "or my second, but I'll always remember this one." "Is this your new birthday?" Maria teased. "It's the day I got my real family," Lily replied. Andrew kissed the top of her head. "It's our birthday too." The stars came out one by one, and they stayed there, swinging gently, hearts full, hands held, not needing to speak. Because when you've walked through darkness and come out the other side together, silence is the sweetest sound of all. By the time summer reached its peak, the little house had taken on a life of its own. Wind chimes danced on the porch, chalk drawings covered the driveway. Lily's laughter echoed from the backyard like music that never stopped. She built forts out of bedsheets, ran barefoot through sprinklers, and declared every Thursday, "Pancake Dinner Day." Andrew sometimes caught himself standing in the hallway just watching her, watching the way her hair flew as she spun, how she shouted "Ta-da!" after leaping off a chair, the way she always checked to see if he was watching. He always was. Maria settled into her rhythm too. She started writing again, small essays, personal reflections. She shared a few online, and before long her posts were reaching thousands. One day she called Andrew over to her laptop. "Look at this." It was a comment under one of her stories. "I thought I was too broken to be a mother again, but you gave me hope. Thank you." Andrew smiled. "You're changing lives." She looked at him. "So are you." They never defined their relationship. They didn't have to. It wasn't about labels. It was about consistency, presence, choosing each other every day. One afternoon, Lily came running into the kitchen with a wide grin. "I have a question." Andrew set down the dish towel. "Shoot." "Nah, if you weren't my daddy, what would you be?" He chuckled. "I don't know. Maybe a tired doctor with too many books." She shook her head. "Wrong. You'd still be my daddy. You'd just have to find me again." Maria looked up from the sink, eyes meeting Andrew's. He walked over and knelt beside Lily. "Well then, I guess I'd better get good at finding you, huh?" She nodded seriously. "Just in case I get lost again." Andrew kissed her forehead. "If you ever do, I'll find you. Every time." That night, as Lily fell asleep curled beside her giraffe, Maria sat on the porch with a notebook in her lap. She passed it to Andrew. The first page read, "Letters to the Girl Who Saved Us." It was the title of the book she was writing. "She didn't just survive, Andrew," Maria said softly. "She rebuilt two broken adults and gave us a reason to start over." He turned the page. It was blank. "Want to help me fill it?" He nodded. "I'd be honored." And so they began writing, one page at a time. Stories, memories, letters of love and gratitude. They wrote about the day she called him Daddy, the day she called Maria Mommy again, the hospital bed, the garden bench, the courthouse. Each word was a piece of their mosaic, a map of where they'd been, and a compass for where they were going, because the girl they once called Angel had given them a life more real than any they had known. And now they were ready to tell the world. The following fall, Lily started third grade. She picked out her own backpack, a rainbow one with little wings, and insisted on packing her lunch herself. "I'm big now," she declared proudly. "I can make my own sandwich." Andrew watched her from the doorway, amused. "Just remember, peanut butter on both slices, not just one." "I know, Daddy," she said, rolling her eyes. "I'm not a rookie." Maria snapped a picture as Lily zipped her bag and struck a pose by the front door. "Okay, go stand with Daddy," she said. Lily threw her arms around Andrew's waist. "We're a team." Maria took the photo. Later that night she printed it and slipped it into the scrapbook next to one labeled "First Day New Family." Lily's teacher later told them she was thriving, curious, bright, kind to every student. "She speaks about her family with so much joy," the teacher said. "She's the kind of child that makes you believe in healing." But even as their life settled into a rhythm, echoes of the past found subtle ways of returning. One weekend, while cleaning out the attic, Andrew came across an old cardboard box. Inside were the clothes Lily wore when she arrived at the hospital. A torn hoodie, one muddy sneaker, and a faded hair clip. He sat with the box for a long time. Maria found him there, legs crossed on the wooden floor, holding the clip in his hand. "I forgot how small she was," he said quietly. Maria knelt beside him. "I never will." They decided to keep the box, but not in the attic. Instead, they placed it on a high shelf in Lily's closet. "When she's ready," Maria said, "we'll let her see it when she asks." Because someday, Lily would want to know the whole story, the parts they hadn't shared yet, the hours in the OR, the legal fears, the doubt, the waiting, the ache of loving a child you might not be allowed to keep. And when that time came, they would tell her everything. But not yet, for now they let her be a child. They let her run through leaves in the backyard. They let her sing too loud at bedtime. They let her climb into their bed when she had bad dreams, because this was her childhood, the second chance at it. One evening, as Andrew tucked her in, she asked, "Do you think people can be born twice?" He paused. "What do you mean?" "I feel like I had a life before, and then one after I met you and Mommy." He smiled. "Then yes, I think some people are lucky enough to be born twice." She nodded sleepily. "The second time's my favorite." He kissed her cheek. "Mine too." And as he turned out the light, he realized something. The miracle wasn't just that she survived. It was that she taught them all how to start over, with hope, with love, and with each other. Winter returned with a gentle hush. Snow fell slowly outside their windows, covering the streets like a soft memory. Inside, the little house was full of warmth, of light, of stories told under thick blankets, while the fire crackled nearby. Lily had grown even more curious. She asked questions about everything: why snowflakes were different, how stars were born, whether her giraffe could have a middle name. One afternoon, she sat at the table with Maria, flipping through an old photo album. "Mommy," she said, pointing to a baby picture, "is that me?" Maria nodded. "You were just a few days old." Lily traced the photo with her finger. "Was Daddy there?" Maria hesitated. "Not yet. That was before we knew him." Lily turned the page slowly. "I can't imagine life without him." Maria smiled, gently pulling Lily into her lap. "Sometimes the people meant to be in your story don't show up at the beginning, but they always arrive at the right time." That evening she told Andrew about the conversation. He listened quietly, then whispered, "I don't know who I was before her." "You were waiting," Maria said simply. Lily's school held a winter celebration, and she volunteered to perform a solo. She chose "You'll Be in My Heart" and dedicated it, publicly, to her parents. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. But she didn't smile until she locked eyes with Andrew and Maria in the front row. After the performance, her classmates' parents came to shake their hands. "You're raising a brave one. She's a treasure. You can see the love in her eyes." Maria beamed with pride. Andrew, never one for public displays, stood quietly behind her, hand resting on Lily's shoulder. But that night, when the house was dark and everyone was asleep, he stood in her doorway, just watching her breathe. He remembered the hospital, the machines, the moment she opened her eyes and called him Daddy. It had never stopped echoing. It lived in him now, as real as his name, as sacred as his breath. Maria appeared beside him, her robe pulled tight. "You okay?" He nodded, "Just overwhelmed." "She does that." He looked at her. "Thank you for letting me stay." She reached for his hand. "You didn't stay. You became." In the silence that followed, the snow outside continued to fall. Slow, gentle, unapologetic in its beauty. They stood in the doorway together, side by side, hearts full and trembling. This wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't neat or perfect, but it was theirs. And that made it everything. Lily's 10th birthday arrived with more joy than most children experience in a lifetime. She requested a camping-themed party in the backyard, complete with tents, flashlights and s'mores. Andrew spent a week preparing, stringing lights through the trees, setting up lanterns, even building a fake campfire out of painted logs and twinkle lights. Maria made the cake, chocolate of course, and topped it with tiny figurines, a little girl, a giraffe, a man in a doctor's coat, and a woman with a book in her hand. When Lily saw it, she gasped. "That's us!" They invited just a few close friends, classmates, neighbors, and a couple of nurses who had stayed in touch since her hospital days. Everyone brought something: a handmade bracelet, a sketchbook, a telescope. But the best gift came just after sunset. Andrew handed Lily a small square box. Inside was a pendant, a tiny silver heart with one word engraved on the back: "Found." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Does this mean I'm never lost again?" He knelt beside her. "You never were." She threw her arms around him, and he held her close, barely able to breathe through the emotion swelling in his chest. Later, after the guests had gone home and the lanterns flickered softly in the trees, Maria and Andrew sat by the faux campfire while Lily lay wrapped in a blanket between them. "She's going to change the world," Maria whispered. "She already changed mine." Maria reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Andrew blinked. "What's this?" She opened it slowly. Inside was a simple silver ring. "It was my grandmother's," she said. "She wore it until the day she passed. Told me to give it to someone who made me believe in miracles again." He stared at it. "Are you—" She took his hand. "No pressure, no grand gestures. I just want you to know. You are that someone." His heart stopped for a moment. Then he turned her hand over and placed the ring gently on her finger. "I believe in us," he said. "And I believe in second chances," she replied. Lily stirred sleepily beside them. "Are you getting married?" Maria chuckled. "Would you like that?" Lily yawned. "Only if I can be the flower girl and wear wings," Andrew laughed. "Then it's a deal." And under the stars, with the soft chirp of crickets and the smell of marshmallows still in the air, they sealed something deeper than a promise: a life rebuilt, a love reborn, and a family forged not by blood, but by the quiet, defiant choice to love and stay every day. The wedding was small, not because they couldn't afford something grand, but because they didn't need it. It took place in the hospital chapel where Andrew had first scrubbed in for the surgery that changed everything. The very place Lily had been wheeled through, silent and fragile, now echoed with soft music and tearful laughter. Lily walked down the aisle ahead of Maria, wearing fairy wings and scattering petals from a basket she had insisted on making herself. Her giraffe sat in the front row, wearing a miniature bow tie. Maria wore a simple white dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers. Andrew stood at the front, not in a tux, but in his favorite blue suit, the one he had worn the day he signed her co-guardianship papers. When their eyes met, everything else disappeared. The ceremony was short, just vows and promises whispered through tears. But each word was soaked in meaning. "I never expected to love again," Maria said. "But you made it safe to try." Andrew's voice cracked. "I thought I was meant to be alone. But then I met you, and her, and I realized I was always waiting for this." Lily joined them during the vows, holding both their hands as they said, "I do." At the reception, held in their backyard, Maria gave a toast. "We weren't supposed to be here. None of this was supposed to happen. And yet, here we are, because one little girl looked at a stranger in a hospital room and gave him the most sacred name a man can be called: Daddy." Andrew took Lily in his arms after the toast and danced with her under the string lights. She placed her head on his shoulder and whispered, "You're my forever." "You're mine too," he said. As the night wore on, guests slowly left. The lights dimmed, the music faded. Lily, exhausted from dancing, fell asleep on the couch with her wings still on. Maria and Andrew stood at the doorway, arms around each other. "This is it," she whispered. "Our life." He nodded, resting his chin on her head. "And I wouldn't trade it for anything." Weeks passed. The book Maria had been writing, Letters to the Girl Who Saved Us, was finished. She published it with a small press. It quickly found its way into thousands of hands. Emails poured in. Letters from foster parents, adoptees, trauma survivors. Each one said the same thing in different ways. You helped me believe again. Lily began writing her own stories too. At first, just about magical gardens and talking animals. But one day, Andrew found a piece of paper on her desk. It read, "Once there was a girl who didn't remember where she came from, but one day she opened her eyes and there was someone waiting, and he never left." He folded the page and placed it in a small box on his nightstand, next to the ring, the first drawing of their family, and a photo from that day in the hospital when everything changed, a reminder that some love stories begin not with a kiss, but with a whisper. "Daddy?" Years later, the stories still lived in the corners of their home. The giraffe, now patched and faded, sat on a shelf in Lily's room beside trophies, books and framed photos. The swing in the backyard had been replaced twice, but still creaked with every breeze like it had a memory of its own. Lily was older now, taller, stronger, braver. Her laughter had deepened, but it still carried the same music Andrew remembered from that first walk through the hospital hallway. She didn't remember the crash anymore. She didn't need to. Her story wasn't about what she lost. It was about what she found. One quiet morning, as the sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, Lily sat at the table with a cup of tea and her writing journal. Maria was upstairs, reviewing edits for her second book. Andrew leaned against the counter, sipping coffee. Lily looked up. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked. He didn't have to ask which one. "Every day," he said. "Do you think it would have been different if I had remembered everything back then?" Andrew walked over and sat across from her. Maybe you would have been scared, or angry, or unsure. But I like to think you still would have found us, one way or another." She nodded slowly. "I think I would have too." There was a beat of silence. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always. When I woke up and I called you Daddy, why didn't you tell me the truth?" Andrew smiled, a little sad. "Because in that moment, sweetheart, it was the truest thing I'd ever heard." Lily reached for his hand, now larger than when they first held each other, but still soft and familiar. "I think I knew," she whispered. "Somewhere deep inside. I think I knew you were mine." Tears welled in his eyes. "And you were always mine." That afternoon, they sat outside under the tree that once held her swing. Maria joined them with lemonade and a box of old letters, ones they'd written to Lily but never shared. Together, they began to read. Each word was a testament to the journey they had taken, each scar, each joy, each night spent, wondering if love was enough. It was, because love had been the answer to everything. That evening, as stars blinked to life above them, Lily stood and said, "I want to tell our story someday, all of it, so that someone out there who feels lost knows that being found is real." Maria placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then you'll write it better than anyone." Andrew looked at them both, his daughter, his wife, his miracle, and he whispered, almost to himself, "I thought I saved her, but the truth is, she saved me first." The wind carried the words into the trees, like a promise sealed in the leaves, and in that quiet moment, beneath a sky full of stars, the story came full circle, not with an ending, but with a beginning that would echo through generations. A girl who woke from a coma, a doctor who became a father, and a family built from the ashes of the impossible. Forever.